refused to publish it when we'd finished it because we wouldn't use another name. I felt very sorry for Alistair. He'd put a lot of work in it, so I relented and I said, no, Alistair, we'll use George's as names, and we'll put a note in there and say why there is another name to be used or considered. They said okay, they went along and done that, but they did it very, very small to what we said. So Wollumbinia George's Eye, Wollumbinia in the latisternum group, I should say then, because it's changing now, is most certainly my thoughts on that animal. This is the one from the purposes from George's as turtle. They got a beautiful big eye. Now, the eye of the turtle is very important for identification purpose. It does not vary on any species right throughout Australia. I don't think it would be probably different anywhere else. The eye is a very important gene. This is the beautiful Manning River where Purvis's turtle is. The turtle itself now, unfortunately, is in a dangered sort of a position. Hans Dieter Philippen made a statement there, but he wrote up there and he was wrong. He wrote wrong. You'll go crook at me for saying that. He said, look after the endangered species. They should look after all species. Don't worry about the endangered one. They're all endangered. There wouldn't be a turtle in the world that's not endangered. They've got to be protected completely. And this one here, really, when I first started to swim and follow that turtle there, they weren't never real common. They was hard to find at times, but always could find a few. Now I can spend all day in a lot of the rivers and not even see one. There are a few locations where surely I know where they are, out of the way, but the rest are just disappearing from the face of the earth. One of the earlier speakers said there's up to 90% of turtles have been affected by predators. All work that I know of by me and others in Australia are being affected by predators. I'd say minimum 95%, 98% is a good figure that our predators introduced and native one, which they've survived with always for a million years, are greatly reduced. There's what's your name, me mate? And of all things, he's got a Purvis's turtle. It wasn't that many years ago. Bob probably remembers better than me. My memory's not so good now. It was never really good anyway, but I do know that when Bob was diving there with me probably 8 to 10 years ago, we could always find a couple of Purvis's turtles. It's a different story now. I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue why they're disappearing. I know poachers are taking a few, but only a few, because I sort of put my finger on the pulse and people talk to me. Other predators as well, but there's other reason which is unknown why turtles are greatly reduced right throughout eastern Australia. An area here, I've seen a few of these photographs I've shown before. An area here is a very interesting one. This is up into the Gulf country. The turtle I first wrote about back in 2000 is one that I discovered, was convinced that it was a new species of turtle. There's 2 dams it comes from I could find. There was the major dam and this small one here from the gold mine, where the water was very, very toxic. Back in 2000, this is too, I went to the dam with my son and son-in-law, way up into the Gulf. We've been a long way after the 2000 Olympics up there, and we pull these ones in, and the turtles I pull out there are what they call Chiladina canni, one that was named after me. But in the same waterhole is this magnificent turtle here. and I was convinced it was a new species of turtle. I wasn't convinced, I knew it, just one look was enough. Anyway, I went about describing it. I told Arthur George I was going to describe it. I had the drawings done, the holotype was all ready to go in, this one here. And then Arthur rang me up and he said, hang on, he said, this thing is a hybrid between Macadamys oblonga and Cann. Well, what a blow. So naturally, I was a little bit rather confused and didn't know what to do about it. I was convinced it was a new species of turtle. And I hung off on it. Today, I feel totally different. It should be described. And I have reasonable belief of that. These names have changed. This is the turtle that is hybrid. Now they're different, complete different genuses. They're hybrid to a turtle which most certainly is breeding. One of them is the rugosa, as I call it, the ex-rugosa. They're calling them oblonga now. From the Gulf country. And Cann, a turtle that also comes from the Gulf country there. Two different genuses, and then they come up with one of these. There's the hybrid on the bottom. So there's the male, the female, and the other parent. They're beautiful turtles. Philip Bergman, does any of you know him? Disappointing. Well, I was just hoping he was going to even show up here. I would have remembered him. He did a paper on the crosses and hybrids of turtles. He's one of the top DNA men, if you want to call it that, men that works on turtles, and he did a paper on hybrids and crosses. And he was at this meeting in 2000 at New Orleans, and I spoke to him about this paper. And he was evidently at the time then, one of the foremost men on hybridization and crossbreeding. And I asked him about it. I said, what do you think about it? He said, if you could find it in another location, he most certainly would consider it a new species. Click of the fingers, a new species. Well, this is the new species. This is the second area that I've now found these turtles. The same waterway, as the crow flies, not that far, probably 30 kilometres, but a long way by creek to river to creek to get into this other location. So that's a turtle that one day I'm pretty sure will be described by somebody. This is the river system it comes from, the Gregory River. This is in the dry season. You can see what a hard life they have, and you can see why they look for dams and creeks and that to escape to when the season is dry. This major, fast-flowing big river is just a sandbar, as you can see there now. A couple of years ago, Gerald Cookling and myself did a trip into the Kimberley area looking for the turtle Cookling eye, which everybody has knocked back. George's, Rod Kennett, Thompson, conservation biology, they all, because of what George's and Thompson said, nah, this is definitely not a proper turtle Cookling eye. And I was pretty convinced it was, and so was Gerald, so we went looking for it way up in the Kimberley area. So this is the turtle I found when we were there with Gerald. It was a Carson River Elsaya species, and I had one glance at it and I said, well, this is an undescribed turtle. And I said to Gerald, what do you reckon? We describe it. He said, oh, you'll be in that, but I pulled out later for whatever reason, and Gerald was going to do it. And going back many, many years, it's still sitting there waiting for someone to give it a name. This beautiful big Alsaia. This was one of the locations where Gerald and I went to looking for Cookling Eye, because when Cookling Eye was found, Gerald told me about it when I was working on my book, and when I seen it I realised that it was an undescribed turtle, irrespective of what I call the hierarchy said. Most certainly it is not. It's something else. It's rugosa for various reasons. Now here's guys knocking it back all over the world. They've never even seen the turtle, never picked it up, never seen it, never been to the museum to have a look at it. Gerald has, I have. It's no doubt it's a proper turtle. Somehow or other, I don't know how I found it, I found a little bit of tissue off the holotype, and it has been DNA'd, for what it's worth, as a distinctive turtle. It is different most certainly from rugosa, or the Kimby longneck that Bill McCoy's recently described, or anything else. It's a turtle by itself. I believe now that Gerald has submitted a paper, and I think that name will again be accepted, and I'll have to eat humble pie. But this is one of the holes where we dived, and it's a very crocky sort of a place, but this one was only a freshie. Beautiful clear water in the Kimleys. This is the Carson River Alsaia, the big undescribed one there. It's been known now for quite a few years. Here's one of the small ones from the same location. Here's another turtle. Many years ago I featured this, I had this in my other book, photographs of it, of what I described the new turtle. It was a scary sort of a place because there's real salt water country. In those days I don't think anything worried me, like you couldn't pay me now. Take 10 men as old as I am to get put in the water there. It's a pretty nasty sort of a place. And when I was there I caught a turtle, which I almost certainly considered an undescribed turtle. This was it here, at a place called Flying Fox Lagoon. Well, Nancy Fitzsimmons and Tony Tucker worked that area, and they said there's only one species there, the Queensland, Northern Territory Northwest Redface. Irrespective, I got a lot of respect for Nancy and Tony. The only reason they said there's only one form of Amadura there is because they never caught this one. They only caught the one, and I had a number of traps in there. We got a lot of other turtles in the waterway, Amadura, but the only one of this that I got was diving. Same turtle again. You can have a good look at him, and here's the ones that you normally find out of that water hole. They're a totally different animal altogether. So one day someone's going to go back to that drainage, they will surely find that turtle, and I think it will be identified. One of the locations there, it's a beautiful place where these red-faced turtles come from. In my book, I call them the Northwest Redface. Everyone calls them Australis, but if they read my book, what I was saying, it's not Australis, that's for the want of a better name. We don't know what Australis is. In fact, Harold Cogger, who I consider probably the best reptile man in Australia, he says it's Macquarie because John Gray, back in the 1840s, whatever it was, turned around and said he made a mistake, it's the Macquarie turtle. But something was wrong with Gray when he wrote that. And other herpetologists in Germany, they realised later on that Gray did make a mistake, and it comes from the northwest part of Australia. That's Australis. This is Gerald and myself when we was looking for cookling eye, which we never encountered. Putting traps in the waterway there. This is the sort of things you get out of traps. There's some beautiful long necks, Garrawindia, which Billy McCord's named, or Kimberley Longneck for want of another name. Common Rugosa as far as the hierarchy is concerned. And Merton's Monitor and our afternoon tea when we cooked it. A few years ago now, time sure gets away, I decided to have another go and try to find cookling eye. On the first trip I just showed you there again with Gerald, we had no success at all. One of our greatest naturalists, Malcolm Douglas, took Gerald and myself there. Malcolm's dead now, I don't know, a lot of you have heard of him, a lot of haven't. He had a nasty accident in his truck and got killed. Great guy. But a few years ago, Gerald got in touch with me and sent me some photographs through on the email, and he said, "These look like cookling eye. Are they cookling eye?" And I certainly said, "Yeah, sure they are. Looks like that to me." And it turned out the original ones, the original cookling eye from the King Edward River, way up in the Kimberleys, didn't actually come from there. There was a bit of a mix-up. It came from the Crockhole. Gerald told me where the Crockhole was, but he was a little bit secretive, unfortunately. I don't know why. And I said, "Well, I'm going looking for it." So I looked at my maps and I found the Crockhole. Well, it took about 4 days to get there of good hard driving, me and my mate. And we got to the Crockhole and most certainly there was nothing there whatsoever. I spoke to a chap on the property. He said, "Oh no, there's another Crockhole further up." So we went to this other Crockhole, a different drainage. There was that small wooden hole, blue-tongued lizard or anything for a swim. That was no good. Made more inquiries, then found a third Crockhole. And then I found it. So this is running into the Crockhole. And this is the turtle I caught there, which to me didn't look like cookling eye. It never had the beautiful patterns which cookling eye had. These are the ones that Gerald sent me. There's the holotype on the right-hand side. Two from the museum, which have gone in over the years in Western Australia that Gerald never knew about because they was buried in drums out of the way, and he went right through the collections over there and he come across these other turtles. Not only that, he discovered that although it was registered as coming from Columbaroo area, where I marked the holotype as, it come from the Crockhole. These other turtles come from the Crockhole, so that's where I went after looking for days before I found the right hole. I got in touch when I got back to Sydney. I spoke to the Western Australian Museum and I said, the Crockhole, where these turtles came from, where Gerald sent me photographs, and he said, "Oh yes, here's the longs and lats." If I had been given the longs and lats, I would have been there for 3 or 4 days, or 2 days, or 3 days earlier, and had plenty of time, not just a few hours, to try to catch these turtles. So it was a bit confusing. This is a small turtle I caught while I was diving there with Gerald. We don't know what it was. Why? Because it bloody got away from me. And we never ever knew. The only other long neck in the area is a Yarra Warrior, or Warrior, sorry, Bill. The bill's described, and it is nothing, 100% different looking animal completely to the baby Kimberley longneck, as we call it. So this could have been Cookling eye, it come from a different river. There it is again. The baby Kimberley longnecks with Bill's breeding, and a friend of mine found a small one. They're a totally different lizard again there, I'm going batshit. A totally different turtle altogether than the one that I caught. So I think that would have been Cookling's turtle. This is the turtle I caught when I was at the Croc Hole. Beautiful animal. Most certainly I'd never seen anything like it before. I had permits to get tissue, so I got tissue from 12 of them along that Perry Creek, just off the Croc Hole, and sent it down to Arthur George's. He was waiting on anything that I found. So I sent him down about 12 tissues, and after about a month or so I rang Arthur up and said, have you done the tissues yet of Cookling eye, or of that turtle? And he said, yes. I said, what's the results? He said, you'll find out when the papers are done. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I just spent thousands of dollars in a month hunting for this thing, and for some reason we didn't want to relay it. Well, I still don't know what the results were, but what did happen, just recently the TSA had a meeting and Gerald was going over there, and I was a bit too embarrassed to tell Gerald that Arthur wouldn't give me the results, but I did. Told him what he told me, that he wouldn't tell. So when Gerald came back from the TSA, he said to Arthur, what's the results? And Arthur said, I haven't done the test yet. So Gerald tells me. So that tells me one or two things. Two of them are plain secrets, or one of them, I don't know. It's a bit disgusting, isn't it? I reckon TSA, Total Survival Alliance, and amateurs and professionals are supposed to work together. It just doesn't seem to want to work out to me. But here's that beautiful turtle anyway, so we still don't know what it is, but it's most certainly not Rugosa. Same animal. Moving off of the Cookling direction now, we've moved just around a little bit to Barramundi Gorge, where the pig-nosed turtles are and a few other turtles, found in that beautiful location in Kakadu. And here is a small Elsea dentata. They're a beautiful animal. The first of the dentata group was this one here, but since then we've had a few other names of closely related or related turtles. About 4 or 5 different ones. Some are still to be described, just as the Carson River one is I showed you before. Here's an Aboriginal bloke I made good mates with. We're out diving on the Darby River for turtles. And he said to me, I wanted to get a turtle. He said, oh yeah, I'll help it take me up there. I'll go and get him and give you a good look at it. And his mates said to him, don't forget to bring some food back with that flag and a wine. And they cook that. In his house, they had a house there on the mission there, and they had about 20 of these big snappers in the bedroom, crawling around, making one hell of a racket. But that was their afternoon tea. Thanks, folks. That's the bigger part of this talk is any questions there? There's sure to be some. You can go for your life. I spoke to Hans Dieter a little bit before about the DNA thoughts, my thoughts on DNA with turtles, and he never disagreed with me, but he most certainly didn't agree with me, I know that. When you see my second section, you'll get a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about, what DNA is talking about turtles. A friend of mine just finished his PhD with honours, described the lizard amongst his work, where the DNA was carried out by Adams, who some of you would have heard of, in South Australia, who works for Arthur, or works with Arthur on that. He's a pretty cleared up guy, and he said these two lizards, which Steve, Paul Horner, is going to describe, is identically the same as each other. On isolation of areas to them, morphological differences, he made them a new species, not a subspecies, and they were fully accepted by very hard previewers as PhD men are. This makes me scratch my head. What the hell's going on? They're knocking back subspecies for turtles and species for turtles on other animals, other types of animals and other reptiles as being identically different. So what's really going on? I just don't understand it. I think, I'm a great believer in morphological differences if they're distinctive and continuous, and also isolation from each other, like the lizards, they can crawl from each other, where my friend's work was covered out and got his PhD. I'm talking about isolated rivers where they've knocked back all these subspecies of mine along the coast of New South Wales, and I'll show you some photographs out of the banquet, and you'll see it. Anyone can shake their head and say, yeah, there's something going on there. And yet when Spencer done the work for Arthur and comes back and says they're all the same turtle, you can't tell the difference. They've got to be kidding. They're nothing like each other. Mid-range their body could be. When they come out of the egg, they're distinctively different. When they're old females in particular, there's nothing like each other whatsoever. A number of years ago, I went to Germany. Hans Dieter was my interpreter there, and some of his friends come up and he handed me this turtle, about so big, and said, that Emadura, where's that from? John, any idea? And I said, yeah, that's from the Macleay River. He said, how would you know that? I said, I can tell. And he shook his head, he said, you're right. Someone had sent one to someone in Germany. It was a very simple thing. His physical body was a little bit different because it's been in captivity and bred. But the iris, I could pick any turtle from any location in Eastern Australia in them days, only by the eye or the head, and I would know what that turtle was. There's never, ever any variation. So I imagine you guys should be thinking a little bit the same with your turtles over here. The eyes will tell you a story, and if that's got a great feature for identification with Australian turtles. Okay, not any questions there at all? Actually before I shut this up, didn't I?